pleasant environment, get ready for a healthy activity. Friendly atmosphere yields tremendous output. Poor surroundings, challenges of today's world. Melting glaciers, global warming is increasing.
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अस्सलाम वालेकुम स्टूडेंट्स। उम्मीद करता हूँ कि आप सब लोग खैरियत के साथ होंगे और आपका पिछला वक्त अच्छा गुजरा होगा। स्टूडेंट्स, आज लेक्चर के आगाज़ पे मैं आपको एक छोटा सा कोट के बारे में बताता चलूँ विच आई फाइंड वेरी रेलिवेंट टू द स्पिरिट ऑफ स्टडिंग एनवायरमेंटल साइकोलॉजी। दिस कोट एक्चुअली कम्स फ्रॉम अ ग्रेट पॉलिटिशियन ऑफ यूनाइटेड किंगडम whose name is Winston Churchill. He once said, "Destiny is not a matter of chance, it is a matter of choice. It is not a thing to be waited for, it is a thing to be achieved." So when we are studying environmental psychology, it becomes very important for us that after understanding all of these concepts, we develop a certain urge in ourselves, an urge to change the things around us, to change the environment around us. Well, that's a huge objective and a great objective, but that's going to take some time for a student to come into action and impact the policy levels. However, as a student, we can always have a research-minded attitude, and we can always look at the things from a very analytical point of view, that what is wrong and what is right. And for students, I always recommend that you should have great capability to dream. Dream is something that makes you more powerful. It tells you about the world the way it is, and it tells you about the world the way it should be. Students, आइए चलते हैं अपने लेक्चर की तरफ, और as usual लेक्चर की तरफ जाने से पहले मैं चाहूँगा कि आपको पिछले लेक्चर का एक छोटा सा रिव्यू देता चलूँ। स्टूडेंट्स, पिछले लेक्चर में हमने थेरीज ऑफ एनवायरमेंटल साइकोलॉजी को डिस्कस करना शुरू किया था, और इसके स्टार्ट में मैंने आपको बताया था कि किसी भी सब्जेक्ट के अंदर इट इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर अस टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट व्हाट आर द बेसिक थियोरेटिकल पॉइंट्स. Basic theoretical points actually constitute certain schools of thoughts, and those schools of thoughts come from the people who have been doing a lot of deep thinking, analysis and research to find out an angle so that they could look at the world from a different point of view. और जब हमने environmental psychology की theories के बारे में डिस्कस करना शुरू किया, तो मैंने आपको बताया कि सबसे पहले हम historical influences के बारे में पढ़ेंगे, और हिस्टोरिकल इन्फ्लुएंसेस की जब हमने बात की तो यहाँ पर मैंने आपको चंद थेरीज के नाम बताए जो कुछ इस तरह से थे. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल वी डिस्कस द जियोग्राफिकल डिटर्मिनिज्म थ्योरी. वी देन वेंट ऑन टू इकोलॉजिकल बायोलॉजी. वी वर डिस्कसिंग दिस थ्योरी व्हाइल वी रैन आउट ऑफ टाइम इन आवर लास्ट लेक्चर. एंड द नेक्स्ट टू थ्योरीज आर बिहेवियर इंटरैक्शनिज्म एंड जेस्टाल्ट साइकोलॉजी. After we have done these historical influences, then we will go on to some mini theories. So students, जब हम लास्ट टाइम बात कर रहे थे जियोग्राफिकल डिटर्मिनिज्म के बारे में, तो यहाँ पर मैंने आपको बताया एक ग्रेट हिस्टोरियन के बारे में जिसका नाम था टॉयनबी. टॉयनबी का बुनियादी तौर पे आइडिया ये था कि किसी भी एनवायरनमेंट के अंदर जो चैलेंजेस होते हैं वो उस एनवायरनमेंट में रहने वाले लोगों के बिहेवियर को डिटर्मिन करते हैं. सो इन अ वे वी कैन से दैट द एनवायरमेंटल चैलेंजेस अवेलेबल टू अ सर्टेन कम्युनिटी और नेशन एक्चुअली डिटर्मिन देयर फेट. और यहाँ पर टॉयनबी ने यह कहा कि किसी एनवायरनमेंट में जब एनवायरमेंटल चैलेंजेस बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ जाते हैं तो चांसेस ये होते हैं कि वो सिविलाइजेशन आहिस्ता आहिस्ता डिटेरियोरेट करना शुरू कर देगी. एंड व्हेन वी से द चैलेंजेस इंक्रीज, दैट मीन्स चैलेंजेस गो अप टू एन एक्सट्रीम. और एक्सट्रीम की जब हमने बात की तो यहाँ पर मैंने आपकी इमेजिनेशन में जो जगह लेके आया दैट वाज नॉर्थ पोल. हम नॉर्थ पोल के बारे में जब भी सोचते हैं वी थिंक अबाउट एक्सट्रीम टेम्परेचर्स, we think about long nights and we think about long days. और ये एक ऐसा environment है जहाँ पर life possible नहीं है. Human life is not possible, though various researchers go in different parts of the year over there to carry out their data. However, certain animal species are surviving there. Now, if we can connect this example to the Toynbee's theory, there is extreme environmental challenge available there. So human life cannot prosper, cannot take the shape of a great civilization over there. Then I showed you certain pictures, and these pictures were from two types of people. The type of people जो मैदानी इलाकों में रहते हैं and the type of people जो पहाड़ी इलाकों में रहते हैं. We just wanted to have a comparison of the environmental conditions. एंड व्हेन वी हैड अ लुक एट द पिक्चर वी फाउंड आउट कि मैदानी इलाकों के लोगों के जो इन्वायरमेंटल चैलेंजेस हैं वो डिफरेंट हैं और पहाड़ी इलाकों के लोगों के लिए जो इन्वायरमेंटल चैलेंजेस हैं वो थोड़े से डिफरेंट हैं। स्टूडेंट्स, यहाँ पर जब हमने इस एग्जांपल को डिस्कस किया तो हमारा बुनियादी मकसद ये नहीं था कि हम मैदानी इलाके के लोगों को पहाड़ी इलाके के लोगों से बेहतर समझें या वाइसी वर्सा हम अपनी अंडरस्टैंडिंग बनाएं। दरअसल हमारा मकसद ये था ये जानना कि एनवायरमेंटल कंडीशंस की वजह से लोगों के बिहेवियल पैटर्न्स के ऊपर क्या फ़र्क पड़ते हैं। तो हमने देखा कि जो एग्रीकल्चरल सोसाइटीज़ होती हैं उनके अंदर अमूमन बहुत ऑर्गेनाइज्ड स्ट्रक्चर होता है, क्योंकि काफ़ी सारे लोग मिलकर एक कम्युनिटी की तरह काम करते हैं और उस कम्युनिटी का बुनियादी मकसद ये होता है कि वो क्रॉप्स को ग्रो करें। और माजी के अंदर अगर देखा जाए तो ऑल द ग्रेट सिविलाइजेशंस केम अप through the places where there were rivers, water sources around, so that they could take care of their agriculture as well. Students, when we went on to the areas that are into the mountains, we found out that the environmental conditions are slightly tougher. And based upon those tough environmental conditions, वहाँ के लोगों का behavioral pattern भी थोड़ा सा different होता है. So we found out that usually पहाड़ी इलाकों के लोगों के अंदर physical resilience ज़्यादा होती है, they are tough, which is why it's an observation, it's just a personal point of view. You might find out that in most of the armies, people who are coming from the northern areas, they are usually soldiers in the armies. So at this point, we figured out that the way both of these communities raise up their children is slightly different. Naturally, in an agricultural society, people want to grow up the crops and they have to be very, very organized. So they would like to build up the traits in their children that pertain up to the level of obedience. Level of obedience was very important for the agricultural societies, and it was directly correlated to the fact that once these kids have learned the level of obedience, then they can properly integrate into the communities. Discipline was another important factor. However, when we go into the nomad communities are those communities who are living in tough environmental circumstances and they are constantly moving from one place to another. In those kinds of communities, the basic traits of initiative and independence were the most wanted traits for the people while they were rearing up their kids. Now coming back to Toynbee once again, Toynbee said that if environmental challenges are very, very high, then that society is likely to deteriorate, and if the environment challenge is very, very low, then that society would also deteriorate owing to the fact that there is very little challenge available. And finally, Toynbee said कि किसी भी civilization को तरक्की करने के लिए intermediate level of environmental challenge require होता है. Students, यहाँ पर हम थोड़ी सी ecological biology की बात कर लें. जब हमने ecological biology का discuss करना शुरू किया, I told you that ecological biology pertains to finding out the relationship of an organism with its environment. And an organism is taken as a biological entity. That biological entity is surviving in the background of the entire environment. And how this organism impacts an environment and how environment impacts this organism, both of these things are very, very important in the theory of ecological biology. And in this sense, we can always look at organisms as one type of species who are surviving with many different types of species in a certain environment. And when one species of organisms are surviving with different other types of species, then there is a relationship of interdependence. And this relationship of interdependence means कि किसी एक species के ऊपर जो अवामिल असरअंदाज होंगे, उसकी वजह से उस species के ऊपर जो impact पड़ेगा, वो दूसरी species तक travel करना शुरू करेगा और eventually ये environment को भी impact करेगा. This line of thinking is also the basis of our ecosystem. Students, these were some of the ideas about ecological biology. Today, I would like to discuss with you in detail the theory of behavior interactionism. Are you ready for that? Very good. Behavior interactionism is a very, very interesting theory. And before you go into this theory, just ask yourself one question. Just look at yourself and ask yourself कि क्या मैं जिस तरह का हूँ या अपने माहौल की वजह से हूँ या मेरे अंदर इसके लिए कुछ खुदादाद सलाहियतें हैं. क्या मेरी पर्सनैलिटी मेरे माहौल की वजह से बनती है, माहौल के अवामिल जो मेरे पे असरअंदाज होते हैं उसकी वजह से बन रही है, या उन खसूसियात की वजह से बनती हैं जो मैंने हेरिडिटी के ज़रिए अपने वालदैन से हासिल की हैं या अपने एंसेस्टर से हासिल की हैं. This line of thinking has been very, very important to a school of thought that was called behaviorism. These people always wanted to know that what are those factors that constitute the personality or the ultimate character of a certain individual. माहौल या बुनियादी hereditary characteristics of an individual. Students, इस सवाल को थोड़ा सा डीपली एनालाइज करने के लिए आई वुड लाइक टू टेल यू ब्रीफ बायोग्राफी ऑफ द फाउंडर ऑफ पाकिस्तान, मोहम्मद अली जिन्ना, who was not only a great lawyer, but he was also a great politician. And I would like to tell you briefly about his life. If you can look at the slides where you can see the pictures of Muhammad Ali Jinnah and listen to what am I going to say now. Muhammad Ali Jinnah was born at Karachi on December 25, 1876. He was admitted to bar in England and then he returned to India and became an active supporter of the Indian National Congress. In 1913, he joined the Muslim League. In 1916, he was elected the president of the Muslim League. He was re-elected to this post again in 1920. He played an important role in bringing about the Lucknow Pact of 1916. In the Lucknow Pact, the Congress agreed to ensure a separate electorate for the Muslim community. He resigned from the Congress in 1930 and channelized all his efforts towards the ends of Muslim League. He headed the Muslim League and struggled until the creation of the independent Pakistan. He was appointed the first Governor General of Pakistan. Students, आपने हमारे founder of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah की biography को सुना. In such a short time period, I cannot do justice with such a great man. But all I wanted to do was to give you a glimpse into his achievements. These were the achievements of an individual who worked very hard for whatever he attained in his life. My question to you is, was Muhammad Ali Jinnah born like that, or was that the environment made him into Muhammad Ali Jinnah, into the founder of Pakistan, the way we like to think about him today? So, is it the environment that's very, very important, or is it his personal biological characteristics that he attained through heredity? This kind of questions are very important for the behaviorists. And they eventually found out that in order to find out, judge, determine someone's personality, someone's capabilities and capacities, it is very important that we not only find a person's genetical characteristics, but we also try to find out that how those genetical characteristics were being impacted upon by the environment in which that particular individual was surviving. So, end of the day, behaviorists started thinking that this is not only the biology, but the environment that plays a great role in the constitution of a certain personality. Students, जब हम behaviorism के context में बात करते हैं, तो दो तरह के वेरिएबल्स बिहेवियरिज्म में इंपॉर्टेंट हैं. नंबर वन आर पर्सनल पर्सनैलिटी फैक्टर्स, विच मीन्स डिस्पोजिशंस एंड एटीट्यूड्स. जब हम पर्सनल पर्सनैलिटी फैक्टर्स की बात करते हैं तो यहाँ पर एटीट्यूड्स बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले करते हैं. एंड वन ऑफ द ग्रेट साइकोलॉजिस्ट्स ऑफ द 20th century, Mr. William James, who actually started the school of functionalism, he once said, "The greatest discovery of my generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering the way they look at things." So if we can change our attitude, then we can change the impact that we are producing upon our environment. And like the great thinker Allama Iqbal said, change is the only constant in the world. So for behaviorists, it became very important to find out that how environment impacts the heredity of a person and how both of these impacts make him go through different kinds of changes that make an individual, an ordinary person into a leader. Students, जब हम इस theory को environmental psychology के perspective में देखते हैं, तो यहाँ पर हमारे पास चंद important factors ये हैं that human beings are biological entity who are sharing this environment along with other species. Human beings' behavioral patterns are characterized by the attitudes that they have. Now, if you can correlate this particular saying with the example of a scene in Karachi where you would find large fields full of black shopper bags, you could always connect it with the attitude. Why people throw black shopper bags on those large spaces? why people don't dump them properly, or why even people use black shopper bags, if you can find out the answer in their attitudes, I'm sure you will have to do a lot of research and come back with a lot of data. And then you can determine that we can change people's way of thinking, of relating themselves to their environments, and only then we'll be able to get down to a point where we can change their behavioral pattern. It is actually a matter of changing habits. But how can we do that? We can do that if we study behaviorism in detail and we study about different techniques that are used in behaviorism. Students, this was a little bit about behaviorism. Now let's move on to our next theory, which is Gestalt psychology. When you think about Gestalt psychology, the key phrases that should come into your mind are perception, cognition, and overt behavior. Now, what do you mean by perception? Perception से हम किस चीज़ को मुराद लेते हैं? अल्लाह ताला ने इंसान को इस दुनिया के बारे में इल्म हासिल करने के लिए 5 हवासे खमसा से नवाजा है. We use our 5 senses to gather up all of the information that we possibly can get, and then that information goes into our brain, our mind. और हमारा mind is very, very developed. Like I told you before, that a human being's brain is the heaviest amongst all of the species that are existing on the earth. That brain carries that information. What is happening with that information in the brain? Naturally, brain is processing that information. And over here, we also come across limitations. कि हम कितनी information को process कर सकते हैं, कितनी information को retain कर सकते हैं, और कितनी information के ऊपर हम तवज्जो दे सकते हैं, और कितनी इंफॉर्मेशन हमारी तवज्जो से बाहर निकल जाती है, या कितनी फाइल्स हमारे ब्रेन के कंप्यूटर में से डिलीट हो जाती हैं. So it all starts from perception. Perception is, let us call it the input devices. And then from perception, it gets into the brain. And brain might be taken as the central processing unit of a computer, where information is properly being processed. Now, when you try to purchase yourself a computer, or when you look at the capability of a computer, you always think in terms of the fact that what is the strength of the hard drive, what is the random access memory available to a computer. Same is the case of the human mind, human brain, when we think about it from the perspective of Gestalt psychology. सोचने की बात यह है कि जब हमारे पास इंफॉर्मेशन आती है, हम उसको अपने ब्रेन में प्रोसेस करते हैं, तो ब्रेन में प्रोसेस करने के बाद हम सर्टेन डिसीजंस बनाते हैं. वो डिसीजंस हमें हेल्प आउट करते हैं अपने ओवर्ट बिहेवियर को डिज़ाइन करने में. मिसाल के तौर पर एक बच्चा जो स्कूल जाता है और वहाँ पर मुख्तलिफ़ चीज़ों को सीखता है, वो सारी इन्फॉर्मेशन उसके माइंड में जाना शुरू हो जाती है, और जब वो उसके माइंड में प्रोसेस होती है और काफ़ी ज़्यादा प्रोसेस करने के बाद, दैट चाइल्ड कम्स अप टू से एंड गोज़ टू हिज मॉमी, मदर, व्हेन आई ग्रो अप बिग आई वुड लाइक टू बी अ फाइटर पायलट. Mommy is very happy, but the question is, what makes that kid think that someday he's going to become a fighter pilot? If you ask the Gestalt psychologist, they would say that he has perceived different types of information, and that information in his brain has been processed properly, and after processing that information, he has come up to make a certain decision about his behavioral patterns. And maybe that child is interested into looking at the fighter pilots, and he designs his behavior accordingly. He tries to be tougher than he is. He tries to stand up erect like the soldiers do. So the little child might start acting out so many things. So you see, students, कि perception हमारे overt behavior को design करने में मदद देती है. And that is an important point of Gestalt psychology. Now, let me give you briefly some key points of this school of thought. The process of perception and cognition are more important than overt behavior. दरअसल हमारे लिए हकीकत क्या है? हकीकत का तायुन करना हमारे लिए बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है, लेकिन हम हकीकत का तायुन करने के लिए अपने हवासे खमसा को इस्तेमाल करते हैं, और उन हवासे खमसा के इस्तेमाल से जो इन्फॉर्मेशन हमारे ब्रेन में पहुंच रही है, एक्चुअली दैट इज़ रियलिटी. नाउ द पॉइंट टू पॉन्डर इज कि हमारे हवासे खमसा जो हमारी 5 सेंसेस हैं, उनकी भी कैपेबिलिटी, उनका भी स्कोप काफ़ी ज़्यादा लिमिटेड है. मिसाल के तौर पर आप अपनी आँख से माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिज़म्स को नहीं देख सकते. जब आप माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिज़म्स को नहीं देख सकते अपनी आँख से, तो इसका मतलब है कि आपके माइंड में माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिज़म्स की तस्वीर नहीं आ सकती, उसकी इन्फॉर्मेशन नहीं आ सकती. सो अकॉर्डिंग टू योर माइंड, देयर आर नो माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिज़म्स प्रेजेंट इन द वर्ल्ड. बट scientific development is the name of using different gadgets, developing different gadgets, जिसके ज़रिए हम अपनी 5 senses की information को बढ़ाने की कोशिश करते हैं और इस दुनिया के उन एंगल्स को देखने की कोशिश करते हैं जो हमारे से छुपे हुए हैं। अगर हम इसी थ्योरी को किसी सोशल कॉन्टेक्स्ट के अंदर अप्लाई करें तो इसकी मिसाल कुछ इस तरह से दी जा सकती है कि लेट अस सपोज देयर इज़ अ स्मॉल डिपार्टमेंट इन एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन विच इज़ बीइंग रन बाय अ बॉस एंड in some time there is a new applicant who passes all the entry tests and he is given a job in that particular department. Now when this gentleman enters a department, he has a long history of academics as well as his personal traits. Maybe this gentleman has been taken by his fellow colleagues, by his friends, as a very hardworking person, as a very intelligent person. But when he joins on the job, he is always exposed to the boss in circumstances where it shows that his performance was not up to the mark, which means that the boss of this department is always catching this gentleman when he is not being able to perform very well. Now, boss is perceiving all the information about this gentleman. और boss के पास इस gentleman के बारे में जो information है वो हमेशा ऐसे वाक़यात पर मबनी है जिन वाक़यात में ये साहब perform नहीं कर पा सके. So, boss perceives all of the information using his 5 senses about this gentleman, and in his mind, the image is that this gentleman is not very capable. And for the boss, this is reality, because he is only having a certain look at this gentleman from a certain particular angle, which is probably provided or furnished by the environmental circumstances around this particular gentleman. However, if you interview his friends, his brothers and sisters, maybe you'll find out that a lot of people would say that he's intelligent, he has problem-solving attitude. But for the boss, this gentleman is not that good enough. And that is reality for the boss. And the other reality for the colleagues, friends, brothers and sisters about this gentleman is that he's a good man. So one reality is not good man. Another reality from different people is a good man. So students, you could find out from this example that our perception is actually very, very important. Someone once said कि खुश रहने का सिर्फ एक तरीका है कि आप लाइफ में अपने पर्सपेक्टिव को चेंज करने की कोशिश करें, आप चीज़ों को मुख्तलिफ एंगल से देखने की कोशिश करें, जिसकी वजह से आपकी जहन में चीज़ों के बारे में मुख्तलिफ इंफॉर्मेशंस आएंगी. सो देयर आर सम पीपल जो डार्कनेस के अंदर लाइट देखते हैं. There are some people who would always say that the glass is half empty, and other people would say the glass is half filled. So this is actually a question of perspective. Now this perspective comes from the use of the perceptual instruments that are connected with the human beings. So students, as you see that reality is actually the perceptual instruments that we are using. So perception becomes very, very important, which is why Gestalt psychologists said that the process of perception and cognition are more important than overt behavior. The next important point of Gestalt psychology is objects, persons, and settings are perceived as whole, which is greater than the sum of the parts. So this is another important corner point, which means कि हम जब भी चीज़ों को देखने की कोशिश करते हैं तो चीज़ों को अगर हम इंडिविजुअली देखेंगे तो वो शायद इतना इम्पॉर्टेंट नहीं है, लेकिन अगर हम किसी चीज़ के कलेक्टिव इफेक्ट को देखेंगे, दैट्स वेरी वेरी इम्पॉर्टेंट. लाइक if you look at a certain scene or a certain picture, usually we human beings find the pictures more beautiful than life. And if you look at a picture, you can look at a picture as a whole. You could say that this picture is beautiful. Let us suppose that this picture is taken from a mountain area and it's a beautiful scenery. There are different types of things. There are mountains, greenery, big trees, and maybe you can imagine neat, clean air. Now, if I ask you to dissect this picture and take each of the parts, each of the objects in the picture one by one, you might not be able to perceive the beauty of the picture as you would be able to perceive the beauty of the picture when you look at it as a whole. So this was an important point in Gestalt psychology, that this is the collective impact that's more important. So parts are not important. Parts only constitute the whole, but it is the whole that impacts the human perception more. We as human beings tend to look at things as wholes, but we do not split them into parts. So another important point comes from this point is behavior is rooted in cognitive processes. It is not determined by stimuli, but from the perception of those stimuli. It means that if you're walking on the road, there are so many different things happening on that road. Let's say it's a warm summer day. The temperature is above 45 degrees centigrade, and you are stuck up in the middle of traffic on a road. Now, 99% of the people, while they are stuck up in the traffic, would be thinking, what a misery, where am I caught up? And they'll be very frustrated and tense. And that is the way they are perceiving all those collective stimuli that are available in the environment. And that comes from the way the people are perceiving this information. There is another gentleman stuck up in the same traffic, but he has had a great success half an hour ago. Maybe he was able to get a job about half an hour ago. He just learned that he has cleared his interview and he can join on the job. The way he is going to perceive all those stimuli is now going to be different. And maybe getting stuck up on the road is a beautiful thing for him, because he's feeling very happy. His mind is tuned onto the angle of happiness. And maybe 6 months later, when he gets stuck up again on the road, it just reminds him of the day he got the job. And maybe he's going to feel happy about it. So for Gestalt psychologists, the important thing was the way perception is organized. For them, the important thing was not the stimuli. The stimuli constitute the basic ingredient into all of this perceptual story, but the way of perception was important for the Gestalt psychologists. The final point in this theory was the Gestalt influence on environmental psychology can be seen primarily in the area of environmental cognition, how people think, feel, and perceive environmental information. The basic point is that the way people look, feel, and think about the environment, that is most important. The way they come to perceive their total environment, the total scenario around themselves. Students, in the subsequent parts of our course, we will refer back to Gestalt psychology in greater detail, and I would try to bring up different kinds of examples where you would be able to see a direct relationship of Gestalt school of thought with the way the environmental psychology is shaping up in the future. So at this point, we are finished with the historical influences, and let me take the opportunity now to lead you towards the mini-theories. There are different mini-theories that are also part of the environmental psychology. These theories are very, very important in enhancing our understanding about the field of subject of environmental psychology. These theories are like this. Number one is arousal theories. Number two is stimulus load theories. Number three is behavior constraint theories. And number four is adaptation level theories. Students, just don't get upset with the name of so many theories. I'll try to make it simple for you, and I'll try my level best to make it interesting for you also. So let us move towards arousal theory. Arousal theory's key phrase that should always remain in your mind is the influence of arousal on performance. Now, what is performance? When we talk about performance, it invariably means that the way a gentleman is coming up with output after certain inputs have been invested into him. Let us say we are talking about the performance of a student. What is the performance of a student? There is a definite criteria according to which we monitor the performance, which means their academic capabilities, which means their extracurricular capabilities, and which means their physical health also. And when we are talking about the performance level of the employees, then we have big forms in which we are monitoring their performance on various different points, which could be their initiative, which could be their problem-solving skills, which could be their personal attitudes. Are they oriented to the team, or are they not oriented to the team? Do they work alone, or do they work with the people? So all these attitudes are very, very important for someone to build up his performance level on the job. Now, what has arousal got to do with the performance? First of all, let us dissect the concept of arousal. As a student, you might have taken many different examinations so far in your life. Now, let me ask you a question. Every time you know that you are going to take an exam, what happens to your body? Let us say that your teacher tells you that in a week's time your exam will start. How do you feel? Does it, that particular statement from the teacher, do you just take it casually? Or do you just start laughing when the teacher says that? Of course, this is not something funny. What kind of response originates out of your body? Probably you feel a little sense of the butterflies in your tummy. Probably your body tightens up a little bit. Probably you feel a little bit excited. And that excitement can also be combined with a little bit of tension because you're looking forward towards the exam. However, a week before the exam, you might not feel so tense. But a day before the exam, you find out that you are not being able to sleep and you are constantly reading books, and your mind is constantly thinking, planning, imagining that how am I going to take my paper. Actually, at that point, you are in an aroused state of mind. Aroused state of mind usually helps us prepare to meet with the challenges. And in order to come up with great performance, a certain optimal level of arousal is definitely required. Arousal theorists came up to say that performance is maximized at intermediate levels of arousal, but falls off as arousal is either increased or decreased. Which means that before your exam, if you are too tense, if you are too excited, then that means your body is out of your control. Now, if your body is out of your control, can you concentrate on your exam? Can you just organize everything that is required for you to concentrate on your exam? I think that will become very difficult for you. So if you are in a heightened state of arousal, maybe you are not in a proper state of mind to concentrate upon the things. Now what you got to do at that point of time? If you are too aroused, maybe you got to relax for a while. And in order to relax for a while, maybe it's good for you to turn on the television and watch something for a while, or read something else, or take your attention away from the exam for just a little while, just to freshen yourself up. You might have observed in yourself that when you study, you sometimes tend to give yourself a break. And 5 to 10 minutes of refreshing break prepares you for working again. Which means that when we are in a heightened state of arousal, we are actually not in a state where we can perform very well. Now imagine if your teacher tells you that your exam is 1 week later and you don't feel anything at all. You are not scared at all. There is no excitement, there are no butterflies in your tummy, there is no tightening of the body, and you just take it normally. You just are totally relaxed. Now, if you are totally relaxed, that means there is no fear, there is no anxiety. Fear and anxiety are actually the types of responses that help us prepare to meet with the challenges. And if you're not having anything like that, then that means you are not taking your exam seriously. You might have seen students who don't go through any type of anxiety or fear, and sometimes because they do not have an optimal level of arousal, they are not being able to prepare very well for their exams. So the arousal theorists said that it is very important for us to have intermediate level of arousal. Intermediate level of arousal is very important in the sense that it gives you just right kind of energy in your body, the right kind of excitement that is needed to pay attention to the task at hand. And if arousal exceeds beyond that optimal level and goes up, then your performance would go down. And if your arousal is below that optimal level, then once again, your performance will go down. If you want to see it in the graphical shape, I would like to take you to the slide. This slide is about Yerkes-Dodson law. As you can see on the graph, on one side we have the performance, and on the other side we have the arousal levels. As you can see, when we are performing simple tasks and arousal level is low, our performance level is also low. However, as the arousal level goes up, starts increasing, the performance level also starts increasing. However, after a certain point, if the arousal level is still increasing, the performance level drops down. This is the case of a task that is complicated. However, when we are talking about the simple tasks, then there is slight difference from the way we would behave on the simple task, which means that our performance is likely to drop down very fast after a certain level of arousal. Which actually goes to explain that when we are going to do something very, very complicated, our level of arousal should stay at the exact optimal point. If you are too excited, maybe you cannot do the delicate work. maybe you cannot do the work that requires a lot of concentration from your side. However, if this is a simple task, then maybe a lot of excitement would be good for you. Students, arousal theorists also discuss different kinds of factors that impact arousal. Now, these different factors can be taken something like this. Number one is temperature. Number two is personal space and vision. Number three is noise level. And then our physiological response to environmental stimulation. Let us talk about these factors one by one. First of all, let us talk about temperatures. Arousal theorists say that when we increase in ambient temperatures, this leads to increase in arousal level, which means that if the temperature in your environment slightly goes up, the arousal level of the individuals slightly goes up as well. So raising up the temperature up to a certain extent is good to raise up the people's performance level, because when the temperature would rise up, the arousal level would also rise up to a certain extent, and that is likely to increase the performance. However, they also say usually higher arousal leads to performance enhancement, but as it increases further, over-arousal occurs, causing performance decrements, which is the same thing that if the temperature increases beyond a certain point, then the performance level drops down. You could imagine yourself in the intense summer heat of Lahore. Let's say the temperature is going beyond 43 and 44. This kind of heat gets unbearable. You are sweating. You are feeling that you probably are not being able to breathe properly. Then when you combine it all with a lot of environmental pollution around you, there are chances that this environment is going to decrease your arousal level, and when your arousal level will go down, your performance level will also go down. Students, another interesting factor that impacts our arousal level is personal space also. Now, what is personal space? Personal space is usually the area in which an individual feels at home. And when that personal space is intruded, that impacts people's behavior. Now, I might suggest you a small naughty experiment. Let's say you are sitting on a table with your friend in a restaurant. You two friends are sitting opposite each other. You pull out your wallet, your car keys, few cards, and you put them on table a little further towards your friend. Your friend is likely to mark out, hey, what are you doing? Why are you putting these things over here? That is a time when his personal space is being intruded. Now, personal space intrusion has different kinds of impacts on people's behavior. Let us see what is that. Arousal theorists say increase in personal space and vision leads to increase in arousal and performance decrements. It is the same case just like with the temperature, that if a temperature rises up to a certain point, तो arousal level एक certain point तक rise होता रहता है, जिसकी वजह से performance भी rise होती रहती है. लेकिन जैसा कि हम जानते हैं कि arousal एक certain level से बढ़ जाए तो performance level decrease हो जाता है. बिल्कुल इसी तरह से personal space में intrusion एक certain point तक हो तो arousal level increase होता है, जिससे performance level increase होने के chances होते हैं. And using this particular principle, sometimes organizational development practitioners suggest their client companies that they should have halls in which people are close to each other, where people can see each other. And if people are close to each other and they can see each other, there are chances that because their personal space is being intruded up to an optimal level, that their performance level will increase. Now, how is that going to happen? When people are sitting close, they learn more about each other. If they learn more about each other, they build up their relationships with each other, they see each other's problems and everything, and there are also chances that they know that people are watching them, so that can increase their personal performance. However, if you can imagine yourself sitting in a cyber cafe, and when you sit over there, your shoulders are actually touching the shoulders of the other person who's sitting on your left and the other person who's sitting on your right, you are kind of stuck up in that place between two people. You are not likely to perform very well. Maybe you would not love your internet surfing at that time because your personal space is being intruded beyond that optimal level. People are too close for comfort for you. So when we talk about personal space intrusion up to an optimal level is likely to increase the performance levels according to arousal theorists. Students, let us move towards the next factor, which is noise level. Now, do you think noise increases your performance or decreases your performance? There are different types of behavioral patterns that you might have come across. You might have seen certain friends who perform very well when they are listening to the music. And you might have heard about certain people that when they are doing their mathematical sums, they like to turn on music. But then there are other types of people who want pin drop silence when they are concentrating upon something, especially when they are studying. So how noise level impacts our arousal level? According to the arousal theorists, they say increase in noise level leads to increase in arousal and performance decrements, which means that if noise level goes up to a certain level, it is likely to increase the performance, but if it goes higher than that, then this is going to decrease the performance drastically, sharply. So the difference could be just like this, that if you listen to the soft music, and that soft music gives you different types of feelings. But if you are listening to hard rock music on the top volume of the music system, then it might create different kinds of agitational feeling in the people who are listening to that type of music. So this way, arousal level can be correlated with the noise level. This is not in greater detail, and we are not going to explore the relationship of noise level with arousal level in greater detail over here, but for the time being, just remember the point that noise level, if it increases beyond a certain optimal point, then it is likely to decrease the performance. However, if it maintains on the optimal level, then it is likely to increase the performance. Students, now let us talk about the physiological response to environmental stimulation. Environment हमें constantly stimulate करती है. अगर आप सड़क पे जा रहे हैं तो सड़क पे बहुत सारी चीज़ें आपको नज़र आ रही हैं. सड़क पर दूसरी गाड़ियाँ चल रही हैं, there are pedestrians, there are different types of billboards. So there is so much on the scene of a road which is actually different types of stimuli जो आपके mind से attention लेने की कोशिश कर रही हैं. So what is our physiological response to environmental stimulation? They say changes in heart rate, blood pressure, respiration rate, galvanic skin response, and adrenaline secretions have been shown to occur with changes in environment. Have you ever noticed that if the noise level rises beyond a certain level, let us suppose that you're listening to hard rock music and on the top volume, do you feel that your heart is beating slightly differently? Is there some kind of impact on your heart? Let us say we increase the noise quality also, and now we have power bass woofers which are playing their part in increasing the sound quality and in producing the right kind of boom, boom, boom. How do you feel? Do you think your heart beats faster or slower? Yeah, something definitely happens with our body. Sometimes you're listening to music and you are inspired and your total body chemistry is kind of impacted. You're feeling light-hearted, you're feeling excited, you're feeling hopeful. And sometimes you're listening to certain type of music, it brings you in a different type of mood. And in that type of mood, you think that life is totally dark, there are no opportunities available. You become very sad, browbeaten, crestfallen. So every stimuli actually triggers a physiological response from our body. And when we talk about physiological responses, we talk about our heart rate. We also talk about the electrical resistance of our skin. And here I would like to tell you that every human being carries 12 British thermal units of electricity. Because our nervous system, the way it is connected with our body, throughout our body, performs, coordinates with the entire body, and the entire nervous system functions through the nerve impulse, and nerve impulse has electrical nature. So arousal theorists would like to study that how our physiological responses can be studied in relation to our perception to the environment or in relation to our reactions to the different types of stimuli available in our environment. Students, let us try to see that how temperature changes impact the physiological changes in our behavior. Increase in ambient temperatures, increase in the temperature in the environment may lead to certain types of physiological reactions. Like when the temperature increases in the environment, the blood vessels start dilating. The blood vessels inside the human body start dilating. With increase in temperature, the pupils of the eye, they also start dilating a little bit, which means that people tend to open their eyes a little more than usual. Perspiration is naturally there, and then there is increased heart rate observed when the temperatures are increased up to a certain extent. However, in extreme conditions, people go through low blood pressures. which is why you might have seen that in extreme summers, people start collapsing. Such types of cases start coming to the hospitals where people just collapsed. They just ran out of their energies. And these people usually collapse because of the low blood pressures. In such conditions, there is insufficient oxygen reaching to the brain. Because the blood pressure is low and blood carries oxygen to the brain, and if the blood pressure is low, then the blood's rate of carrying oxygen to the brain is also low, and brain cannot function without oxygen. So when there is insufficient oxygen in the brain, then the people also start feeling a little bit hazy, which means they are not being able to concentrate properly. So you can see that environmental conditions actually are connected and are impacting all the time our physiological systems inside us. Students, now let us see that how noise level brings about certain physiological changes or certain physiological reactions inside our bodies. Usually exposure to noise alters blood pressure, heart rhythm, flow of gastric juices to stomach. Because when the noise level increases, then arousal level also increases with that. And when the arousal level increases, that means their body is in slight tension. That slight tension also means that the heart rate is also going to be increased, and the rhythm of the heartbeat is also going to be changed. And simultaneously, when there is an aroused state of mind, then the juices of the stomach also flow more. And when we talk about the juices of the stomach, these are all those juices that help the food to be digested inside the stomach, which means that these juices have got to do the job of breaking down the food into small little particles, and these are acidic in nature. So which is why if people stay aroused for a long time, then chances are they might feel a little acidic, and eventually if people stay in that kind of environment for very, very long times, then they might be susceptible to things like acidity. Now, students, this so far so good. This has been very interesting. Now let us check out that how arousal impacts our nervous system also. Arousal is linked with increased activity of the reticular activating system of the brain, which means that arousal does something with our brain, that our brain starts using more information. Our brain is in, let's say, in a more excited state of mind. Since we are not studying nervous system, so I would not like to go into the detail of the reticular system over here. Students, for arousal theorists, consistencies and breaks in the consistencies is also very, very important. Let's say you go to a park. Park is beautiful. There is green white spaces available to you. There might be flowers. और पार्क के अंदर लोग walk कर रहे हैं, चल फिर रहे हैं. You find out people engaging into healthy activities. However, if you find out a person over there who's sitting in the middle of the park and crying, that is something totally inconsistent, totally incoherent with the environment. And that person is likely to catch your attention immediately. So when we look at things, then inconsistencies always act as stimuli and catch our attention. Because as human beings, we tend to see consistencies in the things. And consistencies build up our expectation levels also. And when the consistency has been broken, then that's naturally something that requires our attention for that time period. Over here, the arousal theorists say that pleasant as well as unpleasant stimulation increases arousal. That is to say, room temperature above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if changes happen beyond a certain level, then the stimuli can also be taken as positive or negative. Let's say that gentleman in the park is totally inconsistent with the environment, then your level of attention towards that particular gentleman who's crying in the middle of the park is going to be much, much more. Now, that stimulation, is it positive for you or is it negative for you? Usually when the arousal level increases beyond a certain point, the stimulation is taken as negative. And usually when the arousal level stays on the optimal level, then this is taken as positive. Students, let us move forward a little bit on the arousal theories, and let me tell you another important point with reference to the consistencies. They say changes in arousal leads people to seek information about their internal states. Now, what is aroused state of mind? It means higher blood pressure, the heart rhythm is also changed, it is faster, which means the body is going through the certain physiological reactions based upon which the electrical resistance of the skin is also increased. Now, this is something inconsistent with the normal physiological state of a human being's body. Let us say if you're relaxing or just sitting by yourself, your body is in a relaxed state. Now, you turn on the TV and there is a violent movie and a very, very violent scene on the television. Suddenly, your body starts behaving in a different way. You are getting aroused, and because there's a lot of violence being projected on the TV, then your heart starts beating faster. And this is the time when you could find out that there is something inconsistent, which means that your body at the relaxed state or the optimal level was performing in a different way, and now after violence, your body has entirely started performing in a different way. And that inconsistency would give you an idea that some kind of physiological reaction is taking place inside you, and then you would seek more information as to what's going on. People tend to associate moderate levels of arousal positively, like I said before, and people tend to associate higher levels of arousal negatively. Now, let me tell you, when buildings are being constructed, when different environments are being built up, people spend great deal of expenditure, great deal of money in making the entire environment in that building, designing that in such a way that it brings people to optimal state of arousal, not beyond that. And which is why we see a lot of good ideas in interior decoration as well as the building designs these days. Students, I hope you enjoyed today. We are running short of time now. So let me give you a 30 seconds quick review what we discussed today. We discussed about the arousal theories, and in arousal theories we found out that arousal has to be linked up optimally in order to have better performance from the human beings. We discussed some other ideas also, and let me tell you, in our next lecture we'll talk about the other mini theories also. And the next theory that we are going to talk about would be stimulus load theory. इस वक्त मुझे इजाज़त दीजिए क्योंकि वक्त ख़त्म हुआ चाहता है। अपना बहुत बहुत ख्याल रखिएगा और खुश रखिएगा। अल्लाह हाफ़िज़।